This mixing mic tip is on upward expansion. So when we talk about the four different types of dynamics processing, upward expansion is one that's more recently kind of come into a bit of focus. What an upward expander does is it takes signals above threshold and increases the gain above threshold. So it's the opposite, it's the literal opposite of compression. So when you have a signal above threshold and you apply a ratio, say 2 to 1, something along those lines, then signals 2 dB technically above threshold would output 1 dB of gain reduction. So that would be based on the ratio. However, if you invert that ratio so that the ratio is now, say, 0.5 to 1 or 1 to 2, however you want to express it, then for every dB above threshold, or in this case, if it's 0.5 to 1, for every half dB above threshold, 1 dB is output, which is an increase. And that's why it's called an upward compressor or an upward expander. So essentially, when you look at the parameters of it, it basically works the same. We have a threshold, and then we have an attack, which determines how long it will take before the upward expansion begins, and a release time, which is how long that upward expansion is applied. And then you have, of course, your ratio control and a makeup gain, or in this case, what you would have is a make down gain. So let's start by listening to an audio signal. And let's set our threshold so we know we are being exceeded here. And then let's start. Now, normally when we go to a compression, you would get gain reduction, as you would see here, and then you would apply the makeup gain accordingly. So if we go above threshold here, we can work in an inverse ratio. So if I go up here at 0.5 to 1, now for every dB above threshold, we're getting 2 dB of output here. So I'm just going to pull my output gain down here for a second, so that we don't, because one of the things that this can do is it can actually, when adding a lot of gain, can actually change your output and then start clipping. So now when we apply the attack, let's say that we wanted to make the transient peak more prominent, right? So what I can do is now just apply this with a faster attack and a faster release, and what we're doing is we're making the attack pop out more. That's without. Right, and that's width, right? So what we're really doing here, and this is like 6 dB, so this is quite a lot. What we're doing, and I can bring the ratio down to make that less here so that it gives us a little bit closer so we don't lose the body of the drum. And this is an effective way of increasing the attack. There are many new processors that are out that are called transient shapers or something along those lines. And essentially that's all it is. It's a very fast attack. You can either apply reduction with it or you can apply expansion with it. And that's essentially what it is. The other way of working with this is, for example, if I slow down the attack, then what I can do is I can bring up the body of the instrument here a bit more. So let's just say that I set the attack time closer to, in the teens, and then set the release time longer. Now when I apply this, I can bring up more of the tone of the drum. It's without. Not the most dramatic example here because of, and if I bring my threshold down more, so you can hear I'm bringing up the tone of the drum. Right, and so this is another way of kind of balancing it out where maybe you're just getting too much attack. So there's plenty of ways to play with this. You could either, if you wanted to bring the attack closer to the tone of the drum, you could apply a compression with a fast attack, fast release, and then you're pulling that down closer to the tone of the drum. Or you can expand the tone of the drum by using the attack or the transient peak to trigger the upward expansion, slow down the attack so that it affects the signal after the transient peak, and then apply the release time to determine how much of that you want to do. So it's essentially kind of playing games one way or the other. And there is a subtle difference in terms of the way that it sounds. So this would sound different. The inverse of this, if we just expand the transient peak like we had done before in the previous example, then what would end up happening is the way to do this with compression would be to slow down the attack of the compression so it allows the transient to pop through and then compress downward the tone of the drum. So essentially you're playing games with whether you want to push this up or pull this down, and then you have make up or make down gain. And there is a difference in the sound, but that's the basic essence of what an upward expander is. So there you have it. There's a Mixing with Mike tip on explaining upward expansion. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you like what you see, please feel free to go to mpginsider.com, sign up for the newsletter. You can join the live classes that are every Wednesday night, 2-hour classes at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And what I do in those classes is I mix people's songs live. If you sign up for the Mixing with Mike subscription, then you can submit your multi-track songs. I'll mix them for you online. You could submit your stereo mixes, and I will analyze them and critique them live online. And I do that along with a lot of other mixing advice and mixing tips. Every week is a different subject and somebody else's song, and it's a lot of fun. So go to mpginsider.com and click on the Mixing with Mike link for more information. Thanks for tuning in.